Hello everyone, and thank you for listening to a new episode of Start Inspired. I'm your host, Samantha March. Welcome back. So I did miss last week's episode of Start Inspired. I typically post new episodes every single Wednesday. I missed last week. I've had a lot going on kind of like behind the scenes. And then on this, the channel where I post the podcast episodes, I was working on a video that took me like 5 days to edit. There was a lot going on and I really wanted to get that one up, so I decided to forego a podcast in order to get up what I eat in a day. And then this week I actually had a friend in town visiting me, but we were also going to the Cosmoprof convention. So I have been with her Monday night, and then we went to the convention Tuesday and Wednesday. So I was like, oh no, I'm gonna miss another podcast episode. But I wanted to sit down and at least get it up for this week, even if it's a couple days late. So that is what we are doing. So that is why I've been on a slight hiatus. We made it to about the halfway point of season 5 of Start Inspired. So tiny little mini break in there while I worked on a few other projects and saw some friends, that sort of thing. But I'm really excited to get into this week's episode because I want to talk about cycle syncing. This is a topic that I have seen requested quite a bit in my comment section, in my DMs, in my emails. I talked to my one-on-one clients about this, and I wanted to dive into it. And I feel like there's a lot that I could say, but I figure for the first time that I'm really talking about this in a full-length podcast episode, I just want to go over what I have learned since I have been doing the cycle syncing method for about 1 year now. It's not quite been, I'm probably at like 10 months or so since I like really started giving it a go. But I wanted to just kind of share my experience, what I think about it, if I'm continuing to do it, and also what it is. Because I get a lot of questions of what is it, how do you do it, how does it affect the foods that I eat, how does it affect the workouts that I do, and that sort of thing. So I'm just going to kind of give an overview in this week's episode of how cycle syncing has worked for me this last year, why I decided to try it, and what I have just kind of been learning throughout this time. So before we jump into it, I always like to say, if you are watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you will subscribe to this channel. This is my second YouTube channel. I focus more on lifestyle over here, and I do have my main channel, which is mostly focused on beauty, but I like to post the podcast episodes on here as well. Again, I typically do post these every Wednesday, so I hope that you will subscribe, like the video, leave me a comment, let me know if you have any specific questions on cycle syncing, because I can do a part 2 to this episode as well, where I talk a little bit more in depth, maybe about like fitness, food, or whatever questions you might have. And then of course, if you are listening on Spotify or Apple iTunes, anything like that, you can always rate and review the podcast. Give it a screenshot, tag me on Instagram, let me know that you are listening, and I am by Samantha March over there. But I am looking forward to doing this because it's something that I just want to talk about more, and also, just to be frank, I feel like I don't talk about it a lot because I feel like there can be so much, I don't know, anger or judgment when it comes to something like this, which to me doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, no matter what way people choose to live their lives, I don't know why it has to be like such a thing where everyone has to comment or have an opinion on it. Like, if someone is vegetarian, like, great for them. If someone's gluten-free, great for them. If someone chooses to do the cycle syncing method, great for them. You know, it's always just what works best for you and what you enjoy doing and what you can find, you know, success in. And like I say in a lot of my podcast episodes, if you try something that I suggest, someone else suggests, your mom suggests, whatever it may be, if you try something and you don't like it or it doesn't work for you, you don't have to keep doing it. It's the lovely thing about life. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. You don't have to follow recommendations from someone just because you enjoy them as a person. They're your friend, they're a family member, they're someone that you watch online. You don't have to follow their life to a T. You don't have to buy everything they're buying, eat everything they're eating, or work out all the different ways that they are working out. So again, I just kind of want to give my experience when it comes to cycle syncing, and the reason why I started to get into this kind of all relates back to the time where I was getting sick. And this is something that I've spoken about pretty frequently on this channel. I've spoken about it quite a bit on my main channel and my other platforms as well. but around winter of 2021, I started to kind of feel it in October, November, December. I was really noticing something was off. And January of 2022, I started to get quite concerned. By April of 2022, I was barely able to keep any food down. I was getting sick, like physically sick every time that I was eating. Even if I ate a very small amount of food, I was instantly throwing it back up. My stomach was so full and so distended all of the time. Like I went to bed looking like I was 8 months pregnant. I woke up looking like I was 8 months pregnant. It was uncomfortable. It hurt. I couldn't fit into my clothes. I gained 30 pounds, and from what I noticed, 3 months. I'm someone who hasn't regularly weighed myself, but I remember at one point I was actually losing a lot of weight. I couldn't seem to keep weight on, and I was noticing like my clothes weren't fitting me. I could really notice it in photos that I looked very, almost to the, like gaunt was a word that I was thinking when I would look at pictures of myself. And I didn't know what was going on. I hadn't made any, any significant changes or anything, but I remember weighing myself and being quite surprised at what I saw on the scale. And then within 3 months, everything kind of flipped over to the other side, where I stepped on the scale again, and I once again could not believe it. I had gained 3 pounds in the 3 months that I had started to kind of pay a little bit more attention to my weight. And I just felt like, when I especially look back on photos of myself during that time, where before I started to try anything different, I just looked so uncomfortable, because I realized now that I was incredibly inflamed. Like I was dealing with so much inflammation. My face was puffy, my fingers were puffy, my ankles were super like puffy and swollen, to the point where I had to cut ankle bracelets off of my ankles, because they, at one point were like kind of falling off my ankles. They were so tight, they were leaving an indent in my skin, and I had to cut off my ankle bracelets. And I'm thinking like, what is going on? Like, why am I so uncomfortable? Why can't I eat? I have never struggled with that in the past. I've really never struggled with weight. I've never struggled with food or having, a bad relationship with food. And I just didn't know what was going on. Again, as someone who wasn't making a lot of extreme diet changes in my life or anything like that, I was like, I don't know what's going on. So I finally started to work with a naturopathic doctor in the summer of 2022. Before I did that, I tried a plethora of traditional Western medicine doctors. I tried an OBGYN, I tried multiple primary care doctors, internists, and I kind of kept getting the same feedback over and over again. I'm a woman in my 30s. This is just what happens. Maybe I should go back on birth control. That was what I kept getting told over and over. And what I thought was really interesting is that no doctor would actually run a lab on me. I could get no lab work drawn up for me. Nothing. Like, I was just telling the doctors with the symptoms that I was dealing with, and they were telling me I'm an old woman. Okay, so I was 35 when this started happening, and I was like, okay, well, this seems odd. And so I was like, I guess I just have to try to figure it out for myself. And that's when I started just diving into as much research as I could do, and seeing if there was any sort of changes that I could make. I was eventually referred to the naturopathic doctor that I started working with, who, first thing, our first appointment, after I explained everything to her, she was like, I'm gonna order you all these labs, and we need to figure out what's going on. So after my labs were drawn, she said I had extreme inflammation. I had an E. coli infection. Who knew? I had no idea. And then I was deficient in a lot of areas and was dealing with extreme hormone imbalance. And I talked to her a little bit. I gave her my whole history. Something that's really interesting to me about naturopathic doctors is they want your entire history. They don't want to just know what's wrong with you right now so they can like give you a band-aid for it, like put you on birth control. They want to know the whole scope of you, and then they want to figure out your root causes. It's kind of the same thing. This is a little bit random, but my dog has cancer. She was just in frame with me, but she has cancer, and I'm working with not only an oncologist, but also a holistic vet. And it was really interesting to me working with the holistic vet, because she wanted Aries' entire timeline. From when we got her, when was she sick? Like, I was trying to remember, okay, when she was 2 years old, she had this. When she was 5, she had that. Like, I was trying to remember all of the years of her surgeries. They wanted to know everything from Aries' life. And I should have known that working with a naturopathic doctor, but I was like, oh man, I'm in that appointment, like trying so hard to remember everything that she had gone through. So that was something that kind of stuck out with me about my naturopathic doctor. And we started to work from there and make a few changes, added in a few supplements. I eventually went on to do the elimination diet for 30 days, which is where I eliminated you know, basically everything. I mean, there wasn't a lot of variety I was eating at that time. And then I was slowly introducing foods, you know, fruits, vegetables, spices, meats. I mean, everything from like sesame seeds was on there. All these things I was introducing slowly back into my system, giving it a few days and seeing if I had a reaction to anything. And that kind of helped me as well, kind of pinpoint what my body doesn't like and what my body is cool with, right? So I was making a lot of changes. And at this time, I started to also really dive in online and see if I could find anyone else that had ever gone through this. And, you know, I definitely was able to find some different creators through Instagram and YouTube and TikTok that were kind of talking about their own journeys with hormone imbalance. I eventually did go on to get a PCOS diagnosis, so I was looking for other creators who have PCOS and kind of what they have done to manage their symptoms, again, hormone imbalance. And that is also around the time that I discovered cycle syncing. And to me, this was really interesting because I think I had an idea that my hormones were quite maybe not balanced. But to be honest, I didn't really know what that meant, and I didn't really know why it was a bad thing. I didn't really know what I just didn't really know, but I figured maybe something was going on there. My periods were becoming pretty irregular. I didn't have any sort of like cycle anymore, and or a regular cycle, I should say. I never lost my period, but there would be times where I would go like 45 days without a period, and then it would like show up, and then it would be like 29 days, and then it would be 37 days. Like, I just never really knew what was happening. I started to get quite a bit of hormonal acne once again. So I was figuring something had to be going on with my hormones, and talking with my naturopathic doctor and kind of going through my whole history. I got on birth control when I was 14 years old and stayed on it pretty consistently up until my mid-20s. I took a little break in college because I remember at one point hearing like, oh, it's really bad if you're on birth control for too long. So I went off of it, but my hormonal acne came back and I was like, no, I can't deal with this. Like, I tried Proactive, I think was like the big skincare that was being touted at the time, and it didn't do anything. And I was like, I'm just going back on birth control. I was in my early 20s, you know, I was like having a pretty active social life. I was like, I cannot have all of this acne. So Band-Aid, just went back on birth control because I thought that was my only other option. I didn't know anything of like how to actually take care of your skin or take care of your hormones at the time. I didn't know that was a thing. And all the doctors just recommended was birth control or I can't remember the acne medicine, but it's a very popular one. I know a lot of people that have been on it and have had good success with it, but those were like really the only options. So I went back on birth control and then got off of it when I was trying to get pregnant with my ex-husband. So we tried to get pregnant naturally for a couple of years. It wasn't working. I went to a fertility clinic, and eventually, well, I went to my main clinic. They said my body didn't ovulate by doing a blood test, and after taking some medication to see if it could force my body to ovulate, basically it still didn't work. So then we were referred to a fertility clinic, and I started to take a lot of fertility medications. So I was on fertility medications for quite some time as well, and they really took a toll on my body. Once again, hormonal acne, not just on my face, but like my shoulders, my chest. I was losing hair in clumps. Obviously it was very damaging to my spirit, to my mental health, just my marriage in general. I'm now divorced. And that was definitely very challenging. So after I got off of fertility medications and was going through a divorce process, I moved from my home state of Iowa to where I am now, which is Las Vegas. And I just thought, okay, I should probably get back on birth control, right? Like, you know, again, not knowing much, not being educated on the female body, our hormones, how our cycles work, anything like that. I'm just thinking, well, like, I guess that's what I should do, right? So got back on birth control, and as I'm explaining all this to my naturopathic doctor, she's like, you were on hormonal birth control for many years, then you were on fertility medication, which affects your hormones, then you're getting back on birth control. Like, my body is just like in a state of stress. And you know, not only that, but obviously there's a lot of external stressors that are happening as well, just from a divorce in general. You know, with my career as a social media influencer, I got so much hate when it came to my divorce. I got death threats, which was like very interesting to me because I have no idea what my divorce has to do with anyone else's lives, but that happened. I was obviously moving, I was starting over, I didn't have any friends where I was coming. It was very a stressful time in life, and I had been with my ex-husband for 15 years, and I was starting over as someone who had not been single since she was 19 years old. Like, it's very overwhelming, it's very daunting. So sure, I guess I could say that I was under quite a bit of stress there for a while. So all of that was going on, and that made me really want to understand more about my body, about my hormones, about I didn't realize at the time how much the menstrual cycle really can give you a lot of input into your body and what's going on, and if something is wrong, and understanding that these irregular periods are not a good thing. Having really intense PMS symptoms is actually not considered normal. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. I just really had no idea, because again, I wasn't educated on any of this stuff in school. When we had like our sex ed classes, I remember being handed like deodorant and tampons, being like, all right, there you go, don't have sex, you're gonna get a period, and now you're gonna start to smell swear deodorant. Like, I mean, it just wasn't helpful at all. So I look back at that time, and even continuing education into high school and college, like we didn't have anything to actually teach females. And when you go, in my experience, when I go to the doctor, I'm basically just touted on being on birth control, and that's about it. I started to dive into this world of health and understanding what I could do for my body. It was really eye-opening to me. Again, learning about everything about the menstrual cycle and what it can tell you. I had no idea that there was 4 phases of your menstrual cycle, and I had no idea that, I didn't know the science behind it, of your certain hormones rise at this time and they fall at this time. So that's why you're more tired here, or maybe you crave more sweets here, or maybe you break out more here, or even things about like cervical mucus. I had no idea that was a thing. That's something I'm trying to learn. And I learned a little bit about like basal body temperature when I was trying to conceive naturally. I was taking my temperature like every morning, trying to understand when I was ovulating, all of those things. But now on the flip side of it, of like trying not to get pregnant, I'm trying to like learn that as well. And it's just, it was very easy for me to feel so overwhelmed by all of it, and just being like, I'm in my mid-30s and this is the first time I'm hearing of so much of this stuff. And I feel like there was so much unlearning I then had to do. I started reading the book In the Flow by Alyssa Vitti. I'm trying to think when I started to read it, maybe just after the first of the year. And that's how I felt going through it. I felt like I had to unlearn and then relearn actually what the female body is about, what a menstrual cycle is about. And I tried not to get too frustrated, and just try to be like, you know what, it's in the past, and now you have to move forward, and now you have to learn and try a few new things, and again, like, see what works for you. But that was my little backstory, just, you know, 20-minute long backstory of how I got here, why I got here, and why it became such a focus for me, because my health was so poor. My brain fog was so bad. I was doing the classic things like leaving the oven on and just different things like that, leaving the doors open. Like I would leave my patio door open when I went to sleep at night. I'd wake up in the morning with the doors wide open and I'm like, is someone in here? No, it's just me. I left my door open. Like, you know, I started to get worried for my safety, my dog's safety. I live in an apartment building. I'm like, am I going to light this building on fire? Like, I couldn't eat. I didn't want to be social with anybody because eating made me sick. I didn't want to leave my house because then I couldn't fit into any of my clothes. And I'm like, what am I supposed to wear? It just was affecting every aspect of my life. I was so tired all of the time. It was so hard for me to be able to work. I work for myself, I work from home, but even just like getting up, getting out of bed, I'd work for like 2 hours and then I'd be so exhausted. I'm like, this is not me. I don't take naps in the middle of the day. I usually have good energy, and I just kept thinking, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? How do I fix this? So to kind of touch a little bit on cycle syncing, I was trying to think of the best ways to be able to describe it, but I just turned to online sources so I can share this with you. So what I Googled, what is cycle syncing? Cycle syncing is adjusting your routines around the phases of your menstrual cycles. It recognizes the rise and fall of your sex hormones that can leave you feeling tired, energetic, or somewhere in between. So again, I started to read the book In the Flow by Alyssa Vitti, and I can have it linked in my description box and in the show notes. But from the synopsis on Amazon, it says women have an important biological rhythm that they experience every month that affects productivity, weight, sex, drive, energy, and mood. It says women strive to accomplish impossible to-do lists, scheduling our lives based on a 24-hour time cycle, ignoring the intuitive time our bodies naturally keep, a monthly cycle with 4 hormonal phases that offer incredible advantages. So this says by working with each phase, you'll support your hormones, unlock peak creativity and performance, and avoid burnout. You'll know exactly when to eat certain foods, clear your social calendar, or ask for a raise, or you'll have the tools to do so. Including there's meal plans, there's charts for phase-specific exercises, work tasks, planner, all these good things, right? So I'm like, sure, I'll read this book and see what I can figure out. I did not expect to be taking pictures of so many pages. I have photos of so many different pages in the book that I have favorited in my phone. So when I am at the grocery store, I can be like, okay, what phase am I in? Oh, it's good to eat blackberries right now. Let me go pick up some blackberries. Just different things like that. And it made me really excited because I love structure. I love structure. I love schedules. That's how I live my life, right? And so when I am reading the book, I am watching other, influencers talk about this. I'm kind of making my own plans in my head of what I can do and starting to kind of catch on to how cycle syncing works, learning about the 4 phases, learning how things like energy can be affected during those 4 phases. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling ready. Like I'm going to give this a shot, right? So the 4 phases, I'll touch into that, but when your period starts, like day 1 of your period is considered your menstrual phase. And this is typically when you don't have as much energy, you're feeling a little bit more tired. For workouts that I do at this time, I really focus on either like really light yoga, stretching, even just like walks outside, that sort of thing. And then as you start to, again, like it's just like a circle. And then we go into the follicular phase. And this is, again, when I'm thinking about working out, this is when I start to like get a little bit more energy. So I go into some more like advanced yoga workouts, Pilates, again, still like incorporating walking, that sort of thing. And then we go into ovulation. So ovulation, when you're in your ovulation phase, this is when a woman is able to get pregnant. You have the release of the egg. You also have rising estrogen levels at this time. And this is when, especially for me, I find that I have the most energy. So this is when I do more like high intensity workouts. Like I'm doing like the Stairmaster. I'm incorporating more strength training in here. And again, I just kind of feel the most social even. To me personally, I feel like more like confident in my body, like just different things like that. And then after the ovulation phase, if you do not get pregnant, then you go into your luteal phase. And this is when I start to like wind down. So again, it goes in a circle. So from light yoga, stretching, you know, amping it up to a little bit more advanced yoga and Pilates workouts. Ovulations, we're going into like strength training, reformer Pilates. Luteal, I start to come back down. First off, my luteal phase is when I start to go back to more like yoga, Pilates, like still advanced, but like starting to wind down. And then until I get to like the lighter levels, and then my period comes. So I'm stretching, taking time off, rest days, walking, that sort of thing. And then we just do it again. And what I learned from the book and the flow as well, like it didn't just focus on workouts, but it also focused on food. And I really enjoyed that it explained to me why certain foods were the best to eat at certain times. Like when you are on your period, it's good to eat foods that are higher in iron, because that's something that you are losing through your blood every single day. So and it gave examples of what foods are the best to eat. My dog is straight snoring. She is so bored with us, so if you hear her, that's what's happening. And I'm going to be looking at this is coming from Thrive Market. They actually had a really good blog post, I felt, on cycle syncing and especially foods. And one thing that they shared on here too that I had heard of is to think about the 4 different phases actually as seasons. So in your menstrual phase is kind of more like winter. You kind of want to stay inside and be like cozy and warm, and just like you don't want to like do as much. And you also kind of gravitate more towards like warmer foods, that sort of thing, and soups, and again like high iron foods. And then once you go into the follicular phase, that would be your spring. Your ovulation is summer. And that's when, like, again, you have the most energy, you want to be out and about, you're kind of leaning on like the more colder foods or lighter foods, you know, salads, smoothies, that sort of thing. And then when you get into your luteal, that is the fall time. So menstrual phase, again, I kind of touched on that. For follicular phase, says this is the phase when the lining of your uterus starts to grow again, and a hormone called FSH prompts follicles to grow in the ovaries, and that follicle is forming a mature egg. So during this time, your estrogen levels are slowly beginning to rise as your body prepares for ovulation. So energy levels start to rise as well. Again, when it comes to workouts, that's why I'm like starting to amp it up a little bit more. You'll want to eat to support follicular growth and maintain hormone balance. This says focus on vegetables like broccoli, arugula, lean proteins like fish or chicken, or like complex carbohydrates, things like that. And then we go over into the ovulation phase. Again, this is where you are releasing the egg. Estrogen is at its highest point, and also progesterone and testosterone are on the rise. One thing that I learned from the app that I use, which is called 28, which is for cycle syncing as well, it also says usually during the ovulation time, this is actually when you can find yourself to have more skin breakouts because of the rise of these hormones. So that's around the time too where maybe like a face mask is a good idea, or facial, or like something along those lines to kind of help with acne, or also focusing on what you are eating and kind of avoiding things like sugary foods, alcohol, really high processed foods, things that are going to make us want to break out even more. This is a good time to avoid those as well. Foods to focus on in your follicular phase: fresh vegetables, cucumbers, peppers, romaine and dark colored berries, salmon, nuts, foods that are high in fatty acids, antioxidant rich foods, and again, avoid high glycemic foods like sugar, white bread, highly processed foods. So, and again, energy levels are higher. That's what I am doing like the most for my workouts. And then the luteal phase. So if you are not getting pregnant, your uterine lining will start to shed. That's what then pushes you into your menstrual phase. But for your hormones in this, after ovulation occurs, progesterone begins to rise and estrogen actually goes lower. So this is when you're most likely to experience those PMS symptoms like bloating, mood swings, and fatigue, because of how those hormone levels are reacting or responding, or however you want to say that. What I'm trained, certified to anything like that, just someone who wanted to learn about my body. But this recommends incorporating foods high in B6 and C, as they can help support progesterone levels. You might also crave more warming and higher fat foods during this time, like stews and soups, because you're kind of in that fall season. So foods high in vitamin B6 like salmon and turkey, high in vitamin C, lemons, kiwis. Foods high in fiber like bran, whole grains, and legumes. Increasing progesterone levels also often cause constipation during this phase, so don't forget your seeds and vegetables. So again, all things that I had no idea anything about, right? I started to really incorporate all of this into my life, and I was excited for it, and I started to pay more attention to the foods I was eating and when. I also started looking into things like seed cycling, like incorporating pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds more into my diet as well. That was something that I read on In the Flow. I started to adjust my workouts and again kind of follow the cycle syncing method that I was talking about there. And then also when I was reading In the Flow, I really liked that it gave examples of how to even tailor like your personal life or your work schedule. Like at these points you might be more creative, at these points again you might be more wanting to be like in solitude, maybe not the best time for like a first date type of situation. And I was like, oh, I can really, like, I can do that as well. For me, what I do, I am an entrepreneur, I make my own schedule. So I'm like, let me just try that and see if I notice anything or notice any sort of a difference. And one of the big takeaways that I got, you know, especially from In the Flow, was we have been geared towards this 24-hour clock for so long, which is actually based on the male body and the male hormones. They have 24 hours where they have lower energy, higher energy, lower energy, and that's kind of how their day is and how all of our days have been structured for so long, versus the female body, which is on actually the 28-day cycle. So like I was saying in the beginning, instead of trying to do everything in one day and always do like the high intensity workouts and like just all these different things, to look at it more spread out, and you have 28 days where your hormones are going to fluctuate. And if we can work with them versus against them, how can things look different for us? How can things look different when it comes to our weight, our fitness, our mental health, our moods, and even things like PMS symptoms? So again, I went into it as I'm just going to try it out. If it works, cool. If it doesn't, that's cool too. I at least gave it a shot, right? So I will say, I believe it was the 3rd month where I was really trying. Like I was really paying attention to my diet, just having a better diet in general, but also really following, okay, these foods are good to eat right now. These foods are best to stay away from, that sort of thing. Adjusting my workouts, which I actually, truly my favorite part of this has been my workout schedule. I feel like it just fits with me so much better. I can actually really tell when I have more energy. I can tell when I have more low energy. And I just feel like this really works for me fitness wise, especially. So I'm doing that. And at around the 3-month mark, I remember getting my period and being so surprised because I had no PMS symptoms. I had no idea, because you know, before I could feel it in my body. You know, sometimes I could feel like a little twinge or certain cramps, or like in my back, or I would notice that I would like start to crave a lot of sugar, or I would just, to be quite frank, like sometimes I would just be crazy. Like just like it wouldn't make any sense. Like even just sitting at my house, like I would get mad over the tiniest little things for no reason, and I'd be like, why am I so upset right now? None of that was happening. And I was like, well, this is interesting. What's that? And I remember thinking, because again, my period had been irregular for quite some time. So sometimes I just like didn't know when it was going to come or not. And I just remember getting my period and being like, that's so weird. That's so weird. And then I was like, wait, is it? Is it weird? Or did I actually do it? Am I actually doing it? Did I actually work with my hormones this month and give myself like the best shot instead of working against them? And I was so excited. And then the next month, the same thing happened. And I mean, I'll say like I jumped into it with even more vigor than the month before. Like I was doing my 28 app every single day and checking to see what it was saying and Googling things online and I was like really trying. And then the second month came with no PMS symptoms, and I was like, okay. Because again, what I read in the flow is PMS symptoms are not necessarily normal. It's your body letting you know that something is a little bit wrong, something is a little bit out of whack. And I really thought that was BS, because so many women I know deal with PMS symptoms, but also so many women I know don't know anything about their 4 phases of their menstrual cycle. They don't know about hormone balancing and cycle syncing and all of these things. So sure, yeah, of course the majority of us have PMS symptoms, right? And I was like, wow. I went a handful of months there just feeling so good, really feeling so good, feeling strong. I was loving my workouts. I felt like I really had my meals down. I was really understanding the winter, the spring, the summer, the fall. Like, I was getting it. And then my dog got diagnosed with cancer. And to me, what's really interesting is I lost my mind. Straight up lost my mind. Couldn't get out of bed for a long time. And I should also say, in case you've missed any of that part of my journey, I was told she had days to live. So this was at the beginning of May. When I took her in to see the specialist, the oncologist, on Friday, they were saying she probably would not make it through the weekend. So I thought I was losing my dog in a matter of hours. And it was devastating. You know, she's my best friend. She's been with me for almost 10 years. I lost my mind. Couldn't get out of bed. The first handful of days I couldn't eat. I know I lost a bunch of weight. My stomach was like concave. But I was sad and depressed. And then when I was like, you need to snap out of it, you need to get it together, I just was eating whatever. I mean, a ton of it was sugar. All I lived on for a while there was like Sprite and white cheddar popcorn. I was ordering out all of the time. I mean, I just truly was like in survival mode, is the way that I would describe it. And my PMS symptoms came back, and came back roaring. I can remember getting my period and having to search my apartment for my heating pad, because I had put it away. I didn't need it for so long. Put my heating pad away. I was searching everywhere. Where is my heating pad? My stomach hurts so bad. I can't move. I can't get out. Like, it was so bad. And I just remember thinking, did I just erase all of the work that I've been doing for almost this past year now? And I was so upset with myself. But what's interesting to me, if I can find silver linings out of anything, going from trying so hard to keep up with cycle syncing to really falling off the wagon for a couple of months really actually showed me that there was a difference. I was able to see in my body, in my mood, in my PMS symptoms, all of that. I was able to see that when I was paying more attention to what I was consuming and when, paying more attention to my workouts, and just listening to my body more and understanding, hey, at this time, I'm feeling more tired. I don't need to push myself with so many videos. I don't need to push myself so much socially. I can just chill. It sounds strange to say, I guess, but like sometimes I need that permission, I guess, to take a day off. And cycle syncing did that for me. Just chill out these few days. It's okay. And then when I'm, really busy and running around, I'm like, but you got all this energy, girl. Like, you've got this. Like, you can do this. Keep doing it. Keep pushing yourself. But I was truly able to see the difference from starting it and to not doing it anymore. And it made me really actually excited to get back into it. Life is still a little bit hard for me right now. I definitely feel like I'm in a strange limbo just because my dog is still here. It's July, it's mid-July. Everyone is like, quite honestly, even her doctors are like, oh, this is kind of unusual. She's gained weight, she hasn't lost weight, she still has lots of energy and a good personality. She has bad days for sure, but she wasn't supposed to make it more than 72 hours. So I'm really grateful. But it does mean my life is in a little bit of a limbo, and I can't like get to the gym quite as much as I want to. And sometimes I really do just have to like eat whatever I can find, especially when she's going through her bad days. And it's just, to me, it's more important to focus on her right now, you know. I have more time to focus on myself, so in the future. So now it's about her. But it does genuinely make me very excited to get back to it and to do the best I can, even when I'm in this kind of weird phase of life right now. It makes me excited to just try my best, to know when to eat more of the lean meats, to know when to go for the complex carbs, to know when to go for the certain fruits or vegetables, to know when to add in certain seeds, to know when, hey, it's really best to just like stay away from the alcohol or the processed foods right now. Again, not saying I have to like cut anything out completely or only eat clean all this time, but just these little changes that I can make and incorporate that work for me and my daily life. It makes me really excited for it. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover in this week's podcast episode, and just talk about my experience and how I got here and why I fell off for a little bit. But honestly, about, you know, again, silver linings. I wish it wouldn't have happened this way, but that it really showed me those couple of months not cycle syncing, how that affected my body for sure. And I hope that you found this helpful. Again, this is not what I'm like trained in, certified in, researched in. It's just something that I've done on my own, and I wanted to share my experience. There's a lot of great resources out there though. Again, the book that I read was In the Flow. If it sounds like something that you are interested in doing, and if you do have a cycle, you know, this could be something to look into. If you wanted to give it a shot, great. If it doesn't interest you at all, I'm sorry you listened to this whole podcast episode. It's probably pretty weird, but you know, if you wanted to give it a try, I'd be really curious to know if any of you have tried it, or maybe if you want to. Of course, please leave comments or DM me or anything like that and let me know. Or if you have any other questions, again, please leave those in the comments, because I do want to talk a little bit more about not only the workouts and the food, but I do want to be able to answer any of your questions that you might have as well. So that will be a future episode. And I do share some of the things of like what I'm eating, what workouts I'm doing at certain phases, and I share them as shorts on this YouTube channel, and I do also put them on my TikTok and my Instagram by Samantha March. So you can follow me on those other platforms if you want to see some more content that has to do with cycle syncing. But I really do want to jump back in as much as I can, and it's just something that I feel like works for me. If you've tried it and it didn't work for you, that's cool, but it's something that I do feel like personally works for me, and I just feel more educated on my own body. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways, is that I feel like I understand my body more. And instead of my period being a pain, I have learned how special it is and all of the different cues that it can give me on my own body. And I feel really grateful for that. And I just feel, again, like the words I want to use is in tune. I feel so much more knowledgeable on my own body, and it makes me feel more empowered. I feel more empowered when I grocery shop. I feel more empowered when I eat. I feel more empowered when I work out. And I feel more empowered when I talk to other women about this as well, and other people with a menstrual cycle. So that makes me very happy. So I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode. I hope you took something away from it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.